I'd like to start with you, Arianna. You made a wonderful film, all based on archive footage. And it surprised me how many things you can do with shifting the footage and telling this wonderful story about social housing in Italy. And I propose that we first have a look at the clip.
Ma vede, io ormai al posto del cervello o del cuore, se lei preferisce, ho una specie di bussola. Sì, con l'ago magnetico puntato non già verso il nord, ma verso qualcosa che mi dice massima rendita, massimo profitto, massima rendita, massimo profitto.
E ci vuol fare un esempio di come funziona la sua bussola?
Volentieri. E guardi, per esempio, in questo momento l'ago mi dice centro storico, centro storico, centro storico.
Ho capito. E così lei può rinnovare quegli alloggi per metterli a disposizione di un pubblico più civile.
Proprio così. Ma stia bene attenta, il popolano romano, che io, diciamo così, ho sputato fuori dal centro storico, non lo abbandono mica al suo destino. Non lo abbandono al suo destino perché in quel momento la mia bussola mi dice attento, e che te lo lasci scappare, riacchiappalo. Ha bisogno di una casa. Ha qualche soldarello che gli hai dato tu, non sa dove andare. Tu hai 30.000 appartamenti sfitti al Tuscolano, al Tiburtino, al Prenestino, a Prato Rotondo. E beh, cerca di affittargliene uno a lui, no?
Ingegnoso, già, e lui va ad abitare lì.
Più o meno.
Perché più o meno?
Perché a volte sono costretto a sfrattarlo anche di lì.
Perché?
Perché dice che non ce la fa a pagare 60.000 lire al mese.
E secondo lei mente?
No, ma questo non mi riguarda. Io sono un imprenditore, non un indovino. Sta di fatto che a Roma ci sono 30.000 appartamenti sfitti miei e 15.000 famiglie che vivono ancora in baracche.
I really love the film because you're making use of a kind of footage that wasn't meant to tell this story. And you give a kind of an overview of a historical overview of social housing in Rome and the problems that came with it. So how did you start? You started digging in the archive, or you started with the knowledge of social housing? You wanted to tell that. Where did it start?
Actually, I started by studying the history of some projects in Italy, especially the one from the 20s to now. So I started in studying the iconography and the history of this building and of the architects that made it, because at the beginning it was a project about the beauty of this social housing, because especially in the 30s and the 20s, there were some very innovative architects that made it. They kind of invent and inspire the language and the changing of the architectural language instead of following here. So in the 70s they were functionalists just because everything was already functionalist. In the 20s they started something, especially with the decoration of the balcony and some particular exterior design that was not meant to be for poor classes, but they did it even for low-income residents.
The film shows it that there was still a social awareness to bring a kind of rich kind of life towards the working class, one could say.
Yes, so there was an attention to beauty even in this
if
buildings.
It's low-cost housing.
Yes. But then, of course, it changed. And
so you studied with a study of the architecture itself, and then how it moved further. When did you decide to use these images of the archive?
Well, I wrote the project for a contest that was made by this specific archive institution in Rome, which is the Archival Worker and Democratic Movement. And since they didn't have so much about just the building and homage to this architecture, but I started to see everything about the struggle and the battles for home. And so then the research became like double or triple, because I studied this in a filmic way, which means all the film about Rome, about speculation, about the social movement for houses, and also studying the urbanist essays and also the history of movement in books, which are always not combined. I mean, they're different. They spread. So I have to struggle with the differences between the academic and essays and the filmic way. Because, for example, I had to use some propaganda movies and some fictional also movie, but in the movie it's always simplified in a way. Even if some of these fragments were meant to tell this story, where it sounds like a kind of militant reportage.
Bringing back to a simple story of...
But in some way, you can't really trust to this movie, and I had to not trust too much to this movie. So I mixed with the real study on books.
Yeah. What's so sad about that movie that it shows the loss of social awareness? What went wrong in Italy?
Well,
make a long story short.
Nothing.
No.
I mean, we can say in Italy, especially in Rome, the situation about social housing is really bad because they stopped building social housing since the 70s. I mean, now the public spending for this is like 0.01%, especially in Rome. So of course there is a lack of buildings, but it's not true at the same time. So, and I think what explains this movement is more general than what happens in Italy. That's why the movie can be understood even elsewhere, because of course there is also a lack of social awareness about that housing as a right. And also this is not a problem of lacking of social housing, but in Italy, for example, there are 31 million apartments and one on 4 is empty, so it's not a problem. The problem is that more a conceptual problem to me, which means considering housing as a right and not just as a ownership or as a...
So there's more sides to the coin, not only the loss of the awareness of social housing, but they're misused in many ways.
Yes, and now housing, now the house is a private business because of Airbnb. So I think it's general. It's not just in Italy that we took houses from people that need it, just to make.
So there's always a question about using footage, archive footage, for a film, that you're manipulating existing footage for another story. Well, we're sitting here with 3 filmmakers. Do you think that's okay, that you can use anything to tell a new story?
Yeah, why not? I think it was very... I've only seen this clip, but I think it was very cleverly done. To me, it appeared as one whole sort of... I didn't think so much about that it was not intentionally made for that. And I think that's the ability of a filmmaker to turn that into another story. I think that's super relevant.
Oh.
Well, I think it depends, like, how you deal with it ethically or not. Like, whether it depends on the subject, and it depends what you do with it.
Yeah,
like
sure.